Good morning, all, and welcome to today's RCOT, Your Professional Body webinar. Apologies, we started a couple of minutes late today. We just had some technical issues just a couple of minutes ago, but it's all sorted now. So my name is Ruth Mullen. I'm the Head of Member Experience at the RCOT, and I'm really delighted to have you all here with us this morning. This is our first ever learner-focused membership webinar, and I'm joined with a range of colleagues from across the RCOT, all working together towards providing support for our learners, members, and the wider occupational therapy workforce. So they're all trained occupational therapists, and they will be introducing themselves shortly and telling you about their motivations for becoming an OT. So if you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat bar and tell us about your OT journey so far, please do. So we will be recording today's webinar and sharing the slides and also some additional information with you all after the event. So please don't feel that you need to remember everything now. If you've just recently begun your learner journey, I hope you're settling well into your studies and finding your feet with it all. If you are feeling overwhelmed, I'm sure you're probably not alone, so definitely worth reaching out to other students, your college support networks, and also your friends and families. We have student networks which you might find helpful, and we will be providing more detailed information on this a little bit later. If you are a returning student and settling back into your course, I hope it's not too much of a shock after the summer break, and thank you also for joining us today. So in terms of housekeeping, the running time for today's webinar will be about 45 minutes. And there will be time for questions and answers at the end. However, feel free to answer any questions that you may have as we're going through the sessions, and we'll try and pick them up as and when we can. So as much as possible, we would like this to be two-way. So, as I mentioned, please feel free to introduce yourself into the chat bar. If you have any questions, comments, or discussion points, please add them in, and we'll do our very best to get to them. So the aim of our webinar today is to help improve your knowledge and understanding about the wide range of resources and support that you can access as part of your membership package. And we would like you to be confident about the support available. And even if you don't need it today, just to be clear on what you can access in the future should you need it. Okay, so looking at today's agenda, up after me is Emma Grover, who's our professional development lead, and she will be running you through how we can help you achieve your career goals. Following this, Dr. Nicky Daniels, our head of communities and connections, will be presenting on the regional, specialist sections and volunteer networks available to you. Anne Keane, our professional advisory service manager, will also be providing an overview of how our professional advisory service works and how best to access PASS in the future should you need it. Suhaila Mohammed, our head of practice and workforce, will also be presenting on our approach and unique contribution to influencing with real-life examples of our work in action. Lastly, I'll be jumping back in and providing some more information about the research and development opportunities available, and also how you can get involved and stay connected with RCOT. And as I mentioned earlier, there will also be time for additional questions at the end if you have any. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Emma. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth, and hello, warm welcome to all of you here today. So I'm Emma, I'm the Professional Development Lead here at RCOT. I've been an occupational therapist for around 12 years. I studied at Oxford Brookes. I don't know if any of you are joining us from there today. Most of my career has been in adult social care, and later in my career I moved into roles which focused more on quality assurance, practice and professional development. So I'm really passionate about using my skills as an occupational therapist to really support the development of others, recognising and celebrating people's strengths, and then actually really supporting people to build upon those and continue to grow throughout all of their career. And I know Ruth said we were going to share some of our motivations. I think what's really lovely about occupational therapy is that we all come to the profession for very different reasons. And mine isn't very exciting, I have to say, but I'm happy to share it. And that is that I always knew I wanted to work with people. And I was really, really interested in just the health and social care sector, but I just didn't know what was the right fit for me. So I'll forever be thankful to a biology teacher, actually, who pointed out occupational therapy as a possible option for me. And as soon as I read about the profession, I absolutely fell in love with it. And the rest is history, I guess. So yeah, there's just an interesting fact. But I first became a member at RCOT when I was at university, and I remember feeling really excited just to belong to a bigger profession representing a bigger organisation, representing our profession. And when I look back now, if I'm being completely honest, that I could have made even more use of the benefits that are available to me. And that's what makes talking today actually at this event quite special, because it's nice to be able to really be part of advocating all of the opportunities that are here to support you with your CPD, things that you can get involved in across our sort of like membership opportunities, including things like applying for volunteer roles, all of which can do really endless amounts for your development. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'll start off by talking a little bit about the team I work in, which is the professional development team. And our sort of kind of reason for being really is all about supporting you to embrace CPD as part of your lifelong learning and development, moving us all to a place where we do CPD and we record it regularly because we really want to. And we see the benefit of that rather than it being something that we have to as part of kind of our regulatory requirements. Now, that said, some of you might be aware, once you become a registered occupational therapist, every couple of years, 2.5% of us are selected for the HCPC CPD audit. Now, that doesn't apply to you right now in this moment, but I think it's important that we share with you sort of some of the resources we have available. If we can have the next slide, please. So we've got a dedicated webpage all about that topic that I just mentioned. There's lots of questions and answers relating to the HCPC re-registration process, the CPD audit process itself, and also CPD in general. And earlier this year, we recorded a webinar with HCPC. It was called What You Need to Know About the Audit. And this is something that's worth watching back, because as learners, although you'll be exempt from audit until you've got a couple of years of practice under your belt, a really big piece of advice from me is to get familiar with it now. Let's get rid of some of the mystery around it, and let's get occupational therapists everywhere feeling confident about what's expected. And really, a key message here is that audit doesn't have to be something that we dread or that we fear. It's an opportunity to showcase all of this amazing learning that we continue to do from this point onwards. So from this point in your journey onwards, you're already doing it, but keep it up basically and get into some really good habits. It's also really worth mentioning at this point that we hear quite often that occupational therapists would find it helpful to have a single place to record all of their CPD activities. And that would help people to really embed good habits into everyday working life. So we are planning to launch a new way for you to record your CPD soon. So watch this space and you'll soon hear more on that. Next slide, please. Now, earlier I mentioned how our team are really here to support you on your journey of lifelong learning. And when we look beyond CPD as being a requirement, we know how the learning really contributes to our professional and our personal growth and our whole career development and the opportunities that we'll find ourselves sort of seeking in the future. We're really proud of the resources we're able to offer. And what I'm going to do now is just talk you through a list of some of the things to give you a kind of snippet about each of the things that are available. We have our 5-minute reflection templates. So these are designed for you to use on the go and just to record little bits of learning or reflections on your experiences when you've got a few minutes in your day to take that thinking space and that time out to think about that. We've got our EDB insights. So these are sessions with experts and colleagues looking at equity, diversity and belonging and how we can learn from it. We also host virtual cafes. We have placement cafes for practice educators or people who support practice-based learning. We also have research cafes for research interested members. And these offer space to connect with peers, ask questions, share knowledge, good practice, and learning from each other, really. As if you're a member of RCOT, some of you might be already, some of you might be thinking about it, but if you are, you also can apply for funding. So we have something called our annual awards. We also have lifelong learning grants. And this is sort of money that's available to support you with learning, development and research activities. The window for our annual awards, the application window is actually open right now. So if you're a member, do have a look, because there are a couple of award categories that you can apply for. So definitely worth exploring to see if there's something that would fit there for you. And then we have our career development framework. The career development framework is a tool which supports you to identify what you already know and what you can already do, and then where you want to take your learning and development next. Now, the framework itself is widely available, so you'll be able to access that whether you're a member or not. But as a member, you'll have access to resources to use alongside it. And this tool can really support learners, particularly final year learners, with that transition as you're moving from a learner to a professional role. So we have a session later this week if anybody's interested. It's happening on Thursday this week from 2 till 3 p.m. Like I said, it is aimed at final year learners, but it will look at the career development framework in a lot more detail. And if you can't make that live session, then it is something that will be recorded. So that's just for you to be aware of, that will be available in the near future. Next slide, please. So some more resources that we have, and thank you for bearing with me because it's a long list. We have our RCOT career conversations. So this is a series of video podcasts which have been recorded and produced by RCOT, but it's a series that focuses on hearing and sharing the career narratives of our diverse workforce, and which highlight really a whole range of possibilities in occupational therapy. We've got our evidence spotlights. These spotlights introduce relevant topics and provide key reading selected from the evidence base. So a really good one to have a look at to see if there's anything that piques your interest. Deep dive learning resources, which supports you as an individual, or you could do these activities in pairs or small groups, but they're self-directed learning really. And they're really flexible because you can do them over different time frames. So you don't have to finish it all in one go. You could revisit it if you've only got pockets of time available to do it. And then I'll just mention our events here because you'll hear more about these later, but we do run a range of engaging and exciting events, which, all have the potential for you to learn and develop from. So they're all classed as CPD opportunities. So definitely have a look out for those as well. And then again, I'm not going to mention too much about conference because it'll be mentioned later, but this is a flagship event that happens every year. And again, is full of CPD opportunities. So definitely one to be aware of. Don't forget, we've also got library resources. Here you can access occupational therapy literature and resources, including ebooks, online journals, and databases as well. And in a moment, you'll hear more from Nikki about learning from each other through communities, which is a really, really valuable benefit. But before I hand over to Nikki, I just wanted to finish this part by sharing some of my top tips for you as learners. Number one has to be all about getting into good CPD habits right now. So really thinking about embedding CPD into your professional life from day one, feeling confident with what the CPD standards are, recording your CPD and engaging in CPD really regularly. And all it does is just really helps us to be the best practitioners we can be and maintains quality and safe practice that we're delivering to the people that we work with. And a second top tip from me would be to stay in touch with the people that you're studying with now. So not only did I find that really helpful as a form of peer support as I was moving into a professional role, what I found is since then, all of us have we've taken completely different paths, and we work across different sectors, across different nations, across different roles, and you just never know when actually your paths might cross, if they cross, how they cross. But there's so much shared learning to be had. So my second tip is to keep a strong network of OTs around you, and it starts now, really. Nikki, I'll now hand over to you.
Thanks, Emma. Hello, everybody. I'm Nikki Daniels, and I'm the head of Communities and Connections here at RCOT. And the Communities and Connections team is made up of two sub-teams, the Professional Development team, which Emma is part of, and our Communities team. And this is because we recognise how valuable connecting with other people is, as Emma's just said, maintaining those networks and connecting with people who share the same interests and passions, and what that can contribute to your professional development, your career growth, and improving your practice. So I'm an occupational therapist, as Ruth said. I've worked at RCOT for just over 2 years, and I've been a member of RCOT for 30 years when I began studying occupational therapy at Queen Margaret in Edinburgh. So hello to anyone who's joining from where I started my OT journey. So I came to the profession because I spent most of my teenage years doing voluntary work with children, and I knew I wanted to pursue a career that allowed me to follow that passion. So I had an offer for a place at university to study to become a primary school teacher, and I had an offer for occupational therapy. And having had to support my primary school children through lockdown, I'm very glad that I went for the second option. Very grateful that I chose a career in occupational therapy. And needless to say, and sadly, I didn't end up working with children as an occupational therapist, because once I really understood the diversity of the profession, my career's taken me down lots of different paths in acute care and community rehab. And I've also worked in industry for an equipment provider, for the Medicines and Healthcare Regulatory Authority, and I've worked in research and taught for a number of years at a university. And in all of these roles, I've connected with so many peers who've supported me at different stages of my career and inspired and influenced me in so many different ways. And being a member of RCOT has really helped with that through making really valuable connections, for example, at conference or when I've attended events either virtually or face to face, and hearing about and being inspired by others, for example, in OT news and other communications like our regional newsletters. So I've gained quite a lot from being an RCOT member, but I think the connections I've made definitely have been one of the key advantages. So I'm delighted now to be in a role which is dedicated to supporting the professional development of all our members, specifically through connections and communities. And of course, my top tip for you all is going to be to embrace those opportunities to make those connections, whether it be through social media or attending events, building up to asking a question at a conference or approaching that person at a conference. Don't be afraid to ask a question, whether it be of a fellow student or the chief AHP. I've lost count of the number of chance encounters, either online or an event, that's led to a serendipitous conversation or an ongoing relationship or a seed that's been planted for a project. So, as I said, the reason we have a Communities and Connections team is because of how strongly we value professional connections and occupational therapy communities and the opportunities they create for professional development in so many ways. So when you join RCOT, you're automatically part of that community. You become a member of a fabulous occupational therapy community of over 35,000 other members from across the UK, all 4 nations, who are all at different career levels and work in lots of different diverse settings and areas of practice. And I'm sure as students, you already appreciate the value of peer-to-peer support and peer-assisted learning, and realise how beneficial it can be to connect with others who work in a similar area or who've got similar interest to you. So just being able to ask questions about their service or their experiences, and being able to share and have reflective conversations so you can learn from and with each other. Coming together in a larger group or a community with others with similar interests also really strengthens that community. So it really helps us to hear about and share and learn from the diverse experiences of others across all the different services in the UK. And in these communities, we can share our innovative ways of working, examples of good practice, and we can collectively build an evidence base. So it not only helps us as individuals with our own continuing professional development, but ultimately by sharing our skills with each other and sharing that knowledge and experience, it's going to benefit our service users. So, as Emma said, we have several communities here at RCOT which you can actively engage with to support your professional development. Next slide, please, Pam. So, as a member of RCOT, you are automatically a member of your regional group. So, the group you belong to will be based on the postcode you have used to register your membership. We've got 13 regions across the UK, as you can see here on the slide. If you're not sure which region you're a member of, you can log into your RCOT account on your member portal, and in your My Committee section in the menu on the right, you'll see which region that you're part of. So each region has a committee who will organise local events, both virtually and in person. And this might include networking or social events so that you can meet others who are in your area, or it could be an event or a conference which helps to support your development. So it might be around a specific topic area. And as Emma said, you can access your lifelong learning grants through your regional group. So you should get a regular newsletter from your regional committee, which will share local events, news and funding updates. And you can also use that newsletter to reach out to other members in your region. So you just need to get in touch with your committee members. And anyone, regardless of your role or your career level, is invited to volunteer to become a member of your regional committee. We've got a number of students in regional roles, and it's a fantastic way to make connections in your local area, and it's a great professional development opportunity to take leadership in your region. So next slide, please, Pav. We also have 10 specialist sections, and you can see here from the list the current specialist section communities on offer. And just like the regions, specialist sections host webinars, workshops, networking and learning events, journal clubs, conferences virtually and in person, and also offer some funding as well for research and professional development. And if you have a look on their web pages, you'll see that some of the specialist sections also have some clinical forums, which are groups who come together around a more specific area. So for example, within the children, young people and families special section, we have a neonatal forum. And I'm sure they won't mind me doing a plug and using them as an example to illustrate some of the value of being a specialist section member. You might have seen recently in some of our communications that the Neonatal Forum have been running activities such as webinars, journal clubs, and some learning events. But when you start to be a member of these groups, you can also contribute to developing resources, which this group have been doing a fantastic job of recently. They've published a guide for OT staffing on neonatal units, and they've also developed a career development framework specifically for occupational therapists working in a neonatal setting, which takes you through the foundation stage right up to consultant level if that's an area that you'd be interested in working in or thinking about working in. So being a member of Special Section is a great way to access CPD activities and keep up to date, but it'll also give you access to opportunities to develop skills in other areas that you might not get the opportunity to do in your workplace, as I say, contributing to these types of resource developments and leadership. And again, it doesn't matter what stage of your career you're at, or if you work in that area, or you're just developing an interest in that area, everyone is welcome to join Specialist Section. And again, each of our specialist sections is run by our fantastic volunteers who help to identify activities and plan events. So another opportunity for you to consider. Next slide, please. And another community I'd like to draw your attention to, which is specific to learners, is our Carnduff Learners Forum. So as you will see here from the information on the slide, this forum is dedicated to giving students a voice, where you can share and learn about experiences as students from others across the UK. And it's got a real kind of focus and aim to help improve learner support and the learner experience. So Includes Forum is a group of representatives from universities across the UK, and it's run by our education team. So please do visit the webpage to find out who your local representative is and how you can also get involved. Next slide, please. And finally, in addition to our regions and specialist sections, the Carnduff Learner, we've got other networks you might be interested in joining, and we've got a little list there now or perhaps in the future. And we're currently carrying out a pilot on LinkedIn called Research Connect, which is a space for RCOT members to network and discover all things research related. And keep an eye out for our regular research cafes as well, which are spaces for you to network with other members on a regular basis. And ultimately, we want every member of RCOT to find a community where they belong and which can support your professional development, whether that be on a regional level or in a specialist section or another one of our communities that's aligned with your professional life. So we recognise that in the model we have currently, we do have some gaps. So we're going to be doing some work to explore further how we can expand our current communities model. So do keep an eye out for opportunities for getting involved in influencing that work. We're also doing an important piece of work to identify an online platform, which will hopefully enable us to host virtual communities. So it's much easier for you as a member to reach out and connect with other members and to engage with other members and build up those communities. So again, watch this space for developments there over the next few months. So as I said, I've already given you my top tip, but just to kind of repeat that, I'm sure you won't be surprised to know that it is about making those connections. Never be afraid to reach out to someone to ask them a question. And if you see that interesting article in OT News, their email address is there for a reason, so you can reach out to them. Ask a question in the chat box, reach out to somebody in the chat box, or approach somebody on social media. You just never know what those connections will lead to. So thank you. I'm now going to hand you over to my colleague Anne, who's going to talk about how we can support you in practice.
Thanks, Nikki, and hi everybody. It's lovely that you've all come today to join the webinar. You're very, very welcome. So a little bit about kind of my therapist. So I'm the Professional Advisory Service Manager at RCOT, and I'll be explaining a bit more about the service in a minute. Since I was 14, and I'm 51 now, so it's formed such a huge part of my life, and I absolutely love occupational therapy, and I love being an occupational therapist. I got 14, we were given choice of subjects to do for GCSEs, and we were given a book of careers, and I saw occupational therapy in there, and I'd never heard of it before. So I wrote to what was then the College of OT, asking for information on how to become one. And then I did my GCSEs and my A-levels, and I did my degree at St. Loy's in Exeter. And I joined RCOT as a student when I started in 1991. So I've been a member for 32 years now. So regarding as an OT, and that's why I still love OT so much, because you can work anywhere with anyone and you'll find your niche, because as you know, it's all about working with people and helping them to get the best that they can out of their lives and what they want and need to do. So when I qualified in 94, I did a traditional kind of mixed rotation as what was then a basic grade post. So I did a lot of physical, in neuro, orthopedics, but also I did mental health. And as soon as I did mental health, I just completely fell in love with it. So that's what I concentrated my career on. So I came to London in 1998, and I worked in day hospitals, inpatient, in the community, and I became a service manager. So then, all in all, I was working in mental health in the NHS for over 22 years, and I've been at the college now for 7.5 years, and I've been a member the whole time. And I think for me, when I was in practice, I found the membership as like security, because it felt like the college was always there if I needed them, and particularly thinking about having the union there and insurance there, that was something that I just found very reassuring. But now I'm going to talk a bit about how we can support you at RCOT. Next slide, please. So I run the Professional Advisory Service, which also known as PAS, and it's a member benefit. So we help our members with any inquiries they have about professional practice in the workplace. And it can be about absolutely anything and everything, and I'll explain a bit more in a minute. So there are 3 of us who run the service. There's Kusha, so she's the coordinator. So she's not an occupational therapist, but she's extremely knowledgeable. She's been in that role for over 11 years, so she's able to answer a lot of inquiries. Then we have Rachel, who is professional advisor, and she's also so she actually did her return to practice with us at RCOT last year, and she liked it so much she stayed, so that's really good. And then there's myself, and members can contact us by phone or email. Thank you. So we welcome all practice inquiries from members. Sometimes people, members aren't sure exactly of the help they may need, but they just need to talk it through with somebody who's independent, away from the situation, maybe therapist, just because we get it, we get what they're talking about when people are talking about occupations and meaningful activities and about
therapy, that maybe they're having a bit of difficulty in their workplace with getting that message across, or people not understanding what occupational therapy is. So we can help give them that voice. As it's a member benefit, we'll always ask for people's membership number, and also you as individuals, standard responses. There'll always be a theme of the inquiry, but we'll always tailor the response to you. And we always aim to answer any inquiries within 7 working days, but it's often the same day or the day after. So you may have come across these already, or you might just about be going to it's about the professional standards of performance, practice, performance, and conduct and ethics. Can't get my words out. So this is without saying, this is a really, really, really important document, and a lot of the inquiries that we get, the kind of core of everything is the professional standards. So if you've got a query or a question about ethics, or about, say, informed consent or risk or record keeping, anything like that, it's a really good idea to start with the professional standards and to see what's in there, what information is there, and what the advice we give from the college. And then often you can use that as a framework to build a response upon and to get support using that as well. So this is about kind of reminding ourselves as well that professionalism is more about just being a really, really good OT. It's about how we present ourselves to others, how we present ourselves to our employers, and us as representing our professions. So it's about how we think about things, our values and our motivations. And this is something that's really, really important, this final point, because hopefully there'll never be an incident that, in your professional career, but sometimes people don't understand that we're registered professionals 24/7. So they might eat, 3 a.m. on a Saturday morning, whatever you're up to, you're still a registered professional. So it's being really mindful of what that means, to be a regulated profession. We're culpable for our behaviour 24/7. We're always occupational therapists. So it's important to bear that in mind as well. It's not just about when we're in work, be paid to do our work as an occupational therapist. Next slide, please. So I haven't got time to go through all of these, but this is just a list of typical type of inquiries that we get. So things like, scope of practice. Somebody might ask, am I able to do relaxation with a client? Can I do yoga? Am I insured to do a certain intervention? So we will go through the various aspects of that and link it back always to the professional standards and talk about the person and their professional competence and how they want to introduce that intervention, and just talk it through themselves on an individual basis. Next slide, please. And this is just a quick bit about your indemnity insurance. So as a member of the college, you automatically get indemnity insurance. So that covers malpractice, professional liability, public liability, product liability, and everybody's insured up to a limit of £10 million. So it provides cover for you as a member, so you can practice occupational therapy in any setting, and whether paid or unpaid, in a voluntary capacity. But it doesn't cover your employer or your business if you had one. But it's all to do with you as a member, and it travels with you when you're practicing occupational therapy. Next slide, please. And this slide is just to talk about Unison briefly. So for all members of RCOT, once you qualify, become a professional member, you will automatically be a member of Unison. So it doesn't cover members who are self-employed, but it covers members who are employed by other agencies. So most commonly that would be NHS or local authority. So Unison provide industrial relations support for our members. So they can help you with advice and information on terms and conditions at work, legal advice, learning opportunities, and support with fitness to practice investigations. They've got a web page on our website, and there's lots of really helpful FAQs. And if you have any questions, you can either contact Unison directly, or you can contact us at PAS, and we'll be able to signpost you to various advice and support. Okay, so I've nearly finished. What I would say, kind of my top tip for learners is when I was a student, I was very anxious and quite a nervous person, and it took time to learn to be assertive and just to kind of feel at ease with yourself. What I would say is experiencing imposter syndrome upon qualifying is completely normal. So don't worry about it if it happens to you, because all of a sudden you have that kind of safety belt of being a student. So, wow, you're on the register, you're an occupational therapist, off you go. So it's completely normal to have that anxiety. It's really important to reach out for support, from your peers, reach out to the college, reach out to family, just to that's too much from yourself at that point, but just be very mindful of all the positive things you've got, all the skills you've got, everything you've learned while you were a student through placement, and that you can carry that forward. And you're always learning as an occupational therapist. I'm learning every single day. Thank you. Next slide, please. So I'm now going to hand over to Suhaila. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Anne, and good morning, everybody. It's nice to see you all, and thank you so much for giving up your time on a cold Monday morning. My name is Suhaila Mohammed. I'm an occupational therapist. I work here at RCOT as the head of practice and workforce. Occupational therapy is my second career. I was working as a recruitment consultant for the health and social care sector, chasing a career in medicine when I came across occupational therapy. And it was actually a sales director that I was working with at the time who introduced me to occupational therapy. And what I fell in love with was the breadth of the profession, the fact that I could work with people of all ages in all sorts of environments to help them do what's most important to them just absolutely spoke to me. So at the age of 27, I retrained through a master's route and I joined RCOT as a student member in 2015. And my professional journey, safe to say, has not been a usual one by any means. Since I joined the HCPC register in 2017, I've worked in clinical roles for 2 trusts in London. I then moved to a professional leadership role before working for what was Health Education England, and then I worked for NHS England in a national strategic leadership role before I came here to RCOT. And being a member of RCOT has been so beneficial to my career. I jumped straight into being a volunteer for RCOT by being a student rep on the RCOT's London regional branch, which Nikki Daniels told us about earlier. And that experience really afforded me some fantastic exposure at regional levels, at national levels, and I've used all of the services and the member benefits that you've heard about and that you will continue to hear about today and throughout the course of your membership. And safe to say, it's nothing short of a privilege to work for my professional body, of which I continue to be a member and a champion of. So my top tip for you all is don't be afraid to take the road that's less travelled. Next slide, please. So the Practice and Workforce team is one of 3 teams that exist within RCOT's Practice and Innovation Directorate. And the 3 words that you see on the slide in front of you sums up what each of those teams stand for. Next slide, please. So we're the Practice and Workforce team. Our purpose is modernisation, and we will deliver that through readiness. Readiness on the front of employers and on the front of the occupational therapy workforce at large. Our work is based on a system-wide approach, and it's inclusive of employers and the occupational therapy workforce who exist across all 4 pillars of practice, which you'll see listed in the purple diamonds on the slide in front of us. Our definition of the occupational therapy workforce includes registered occupational therapists, the support workforce, our learners, including apprentices, and it's so nice to see apprentices on the call today, and leaders of occupational therapy teams and occupational therapy services. The Practice and Workforce team are 11 people strong. We're made up of professional advisors, of country leads, team managers, team assistants, whom I see as the people who keep our heart beating. We have 3 priority areas for occupational therapy workforce growth, which are listed in the pink circles on the slide, and they are primary care, community rehabilitation, especially after a stay in hospital, and children, young people and families. Next slide, please. So the main function of the practice and workforce team is influencing, and our influencing activity happens in two broad areas. We influence government policies that affect the occupational therapy profession, and we influence professional practice standards that either dictate or guide what we do. These standards, as Anne has talked us through, typically are set by organisations like the HCPC, who exist to keep the public safe. And the two functions together, aligning policy with practice, are what keep the profession modernised and relevant for the people that we work with. And I just want to bring that to life by sharing two examples of our influencing work. Next slide, please. So our first example is an example of our political influencing activity, and this work has been led by a professional practice lead for Wales, a gentleman called Di Davies. And Di has worked with the invaluable support of an occupational therapist, Dr. Sally Payne, who's our professional advisor and expert on the role of occupational therapy with children, young people and families. And the issue that we're trying to influence is this. Disabled children and young people in Wales do not have equal access to education and childcare. And as many of you will know, this is not okay because it means that they don't have access to the care and treatment that they need to develop. They don't have access to the adjustments that they need to help them learn and to achieve the educational qualifications that they need. And in turn, disabled children and young people are stunted in their ability to transition into adulthood and to become the well-adjusted adults that we all want to be. Now, at the moment, occupational therapists play a really key role in picking up on the signs that a child or a young person might have different developmental needs, different learning needs, sensory needs, behavioral needs, etc. And once we pick up on those signs, occupational therapists put in place the right support and they make the adjustments that are needed to help this child or young person develop healthily and to learn in a way that suits their abilities. Next slide, please. So over the last year, Di, Sally and colleagues here at RCOT have been influencing the Welsh Government, the Senedd, to change its policy so that children and young people do have equal access to education and childcare. The Welsh Government launched an inquiry into this issue through a consultation, and Di, together with colleagues, responded to this government's inquiry. And because the submission was of such a high quality, Di is going back to the Senedd, to the Welsh Government, representing the Royal College of RCOT and our members to provide verbal evidence for why the policy needs to change. Now, a really, really important thing that Di did together with colleagues was arrange for the chair of the committee who was running the inquiry to visit a service in Wales for them to see firsthand the impact that this issue was having, not just on the occupational therapists and the teams working with children and young people, but on the lives of children, young people and their families too. And there's lots of reasons why this was really important work for us to undertake. But the first reason why this work was so important is because if disabled children and young people don't have equal access to education and childcare, it affects their opportunities in life. Not only is this morally wrong, but it has bad long-term effects on the health and well-being of disabled children and young people. And these impacts are preventable, right? They're preventable bad long-term effects that, like I said, not just affects the young people, but it affects their families, it affects the services that are involved in their care, and it keeps people reliant on health and social care services for longer, contributing to this increasing burden that we hear so much about in the news on our health and social care services and systems. The other reason this work was really important is that under the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, all children and young people have a right to education, and similar rights are enshrined in the UK's Equality Act 2010. And finally, children, young people and families, as I mentioned, is one of the priority areas for workforce growth here at RCOT. And what do we hope will come from all of this activity that we've undertaken? First of all, it will raise the profile of the profession. It will highlight the value of occupational therapy in the lives of disabled children and young people. Secondly, the real world examples that we've shared in our response to government and the taking the chair of the committee to see the service in Wales will inspire other services to do the same. And finally, the changes in policy, when they come, and I'm confident they will come, will not only improve the lives of disabled children and young people, but it will also improve the experience of our members who are working with children and young people, and the experience of families who care for disabled children and young people. Next slide, please. So our next example is an example of what we do to influence professional practice. And the issue that we have is that occupational therapists are excluded from applying to some senior leadership roles within the health and social care field. And the reason we're excluded is purely a cultural one. Leadership roles typically, historically, have mostly been open to doctors and nurses, maybe pharmacists, and that really isn't changing. In addition to that, the support that is available for occupational therapists who are in leadership roles is variable. So you see it differently in different places, and it's not consistent in the quality of the support that's available. Having said that, occupational therapy has never been more respected, more wanted, and more needed as it is right now by our health and social care systems. Next slide, please. So what have we done about this? Last year, RCOT set up a leadership forum and it set up a leadership advisory group. These professional networks were set up to help us understand the needs of our leaders, but also to show our leaders that we, RCOT, are committed to supporting them. In June of this year, we started mapping where we do and where we don't have occupational therapists in leadership roles to understand where we can influence change. And in September of this year, we started co-hosting a series of workshops and events that showcase the benefit of having occupational therapists in leadership roles. We are pitching these events to those senior leaders who are currently holding the decisions about whether or not occupational therapists are eligible or not eligible to apply for leadership roles. And like our Welsh example, we're using real world examples to show how the skills, behaviors, and attributes of occupational therapy leaders are not only benefiting people, but they're benefiting staff teams and improving the efficiency of services. And there's a number of reasons why all of this is important. The first one, we had a revision of HCPC standards, which came into effect on the 1st of September. The second reason is that there have been legal changes in the way health and social care is organized. And these changes mean that there are now lots of leadership roles, lots of job opportunities out there that could be available to our members. And the final reason for me is that the core skills that we have as occupational therapists means that we are well placed to take up those leadership roles and be amazing at them. And just to really quickly share with you what we hope to do with that influencing activity around leadership, we hope to raise awareness about the benefits of employing OTs in leadership roles. Once we've completed our map, we want to use that map to be able to track changes in the number of leaders, but also changes in the trends of our leaders in terms of their background, their experience, and their impact. And through the workshops and the events that we're co-hosting, we hope to see that these job opportunities that previously have been closed to OTs being made available to our members to apply for, which will increase the number of OTs that we have in positions of influence. That only expands what we can do for our members. And next slide and final slide, I'm conscious we're running out of time, but there are 5 main learning points or take-home messages I wanted to leave with you all. The first is that influencing takes time. Yeah, and the examples I've shared with you are examples of work that I've started quite a while ago. The second is that relationships are key. Influencing happens because of the relationships we have. Thirdly, stories are powerful. The success of our influencing work typically relies on bringing the issues and solutions to life using real life stories. So please keep in touch with us and tell us your stories as you go kind of through your profession. Our influence activity, even though it takes time, does lead to meaningful long-term impacts and benefits for our members. And finally, we can't do this alone. We need the support of our members like you to influence effectively, not only for the growth and recognition of the profession, but most importantly, for the people that we serve. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm going to hand back to Ruth for the next section.
Thank you very much, Sahila. Lovely. Can you jump straight into the next slide, please, Cal? Thank you. Great. So the RCOT is here to support you at every stage of your career. And there are lots of opportunities for research support and development. Some of these have already been mentioned as part of my colleagues' slides, and I'm just going to provide a brief whistle-stop tour here again. So firstly, our Research Connect group is a UK-wide virtual network of RCOT members who work together to ensure that occupational therapy is a research-active profession informed by practice. This virtual network is currently hosted and accessed through LinkedIn and aims to connect research and clinical practice. As well as interacting in live time, this group has monthly research cafes, which you can join and learn more about specific topics and themes. So this month's theme is top tips for applying for NIHR funding with guest speaker Professor Avril Drummond, and this will be held on the 28th of October from 12 to 1 p.m. We also have our Innovation Hub, where you can share ideas that you may have about service challenges and opportunities for improvement. So currently you can submit your ideas through our online form, and we will soon be launching a more interactive space for innovation discussions where you can meet with like-minded OT professionals. And last but not least, we also have a library service. It's a digital library service where we provide access to full-text electronic journals relevant to occupational therapy, which can support and inform your practice and clinical and management decision-making. Next slide, please. So I'm quite conscious of time, so I'm going to go as quickly as I possibly can through the next few slides. So next slide. Thank you, Pav. So the next slide here is just really some gentle reminders about how you can stay in the loop. So we have lots of different ways that we engage with you. We have OT News, which is our monthly membership magazine, which we share hard copy to members each month. We also have social media updates and discussions, which are happening all of the time. We have a monthly digital newsletter called Highlight. We also, as Nikki and Emma mentioned earlier, we have a range of regional and specialist section updates, which I believe are bi-monthly also. We also have a research and development bulletin, which goes out regularly too. And we also, last but not least, we have our journal, which is BJOT, our British Journal of Occupational Therapy. Next slide, please. So as well as all the communications and the different groups and network, we also regularly host events. So every year we have a 2-day member-led annual conference. It should happen, I believe, in June next year. And you will be invited to, to nominate topics for the conference and get involved. So please do watch this space for that. We also have exclusive member-only CPD events. And as I mentioned earlier, we have the dedicated specialist section and regional events as well. And in addition to that, we'll also inform you regularly about a lot of exciting external events which will be relevant for you in your practice. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide is really just providing you with some detailed information for later. If you'd like to join the RCOT, if you take a photo of this QR code, it'll lead you to a page which gives you information about how to join and on the range of benefits that you can access as an RCOT learner. So we do offer discounted rates for learners. We appreciate that times are very challenging, and hence the reason that we do offer the discounted rate for our students and apprentices. Roughly our membership comes to about 2 cups of coffee per month, so at $5.13. So we really do hope that's accessible for all of you. And as I said, if you have a look at the QR code and the link to the webpage, you'll be able to get more detailed information about how you can join. Next slide, please. Right, so I'm really conscious that we're right up to the wire now today. So we don't have a huge amount of time for questions. I can see that the team has been responding to your questions as and when they've come up. So really, what I'll do is I'll just ask one question today before we wrap up. And that's a question that came in earlier. It's how do I know if I've been selected for a HCPC audit? And I'd like to invite my colleague Emma to answer this question, please.
Thank you, Ruth. Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, HCPC will only audit registrants who have been registered for 2 years or more. So as a new graduate, HCPC won't select you the very first time that you renew your registration. But re-registration and CPD audit selection happen on a 2-year cycle, and you'll be notified by email that usually happens early on in the August. So in the month of August, you find out. It's really important to keep your contact details up to date with HCPC so that email reaches you. And the other way that you'll be able to know is when you log into your HCPC online account, you'll be able to see whether the CPD audit section requires action, and it'll be marked in red if you're required to do one. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Emma. That's really helpful. I've seen there's a few more questions just coming through there. So what we might do is we might reach out to a couple of people individually after this session as well and directly answer those questions, because I'm quite conscious that we've come up to time now, so we won't have time to answer everything. Thank you all so much for joining us today. It was such a pleasure for us to meet with you all and talk through the types of support and resources that are available to you. For many of you, this is the beginning of your journey to become an occupational therapist, and we are really here to support you all the way along. So please don't be shy to reach out if we can help in any way. Also, just a really big thank you to all of today's speakers. They're a very busy gang, so really, really appreciate the time that you've also given today. We will be in touch very soon with follow-up to the questions that you have in the chat, and also we'll also be sharing the recording and the slides from today as well. Last but not least, we'll also be sharing a very short survey. It should only take a couple of minutes if you can spare the time. We'd really appreciate it if you could complete this, as we're always looking for ways to improve our support and services to you. So thank you very much all, and we hope to see you all again soon. And as I mentioned, we'll be in touch very soon. Thank you.